started in just a Thank you. Perfect. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a couple minutes here. But I always love to kick off these advisories with a fun icebreaker. So I'd love if you could introduce yourself in the chat with your name, organization, and your favorite kind of tree. I really want to know what everyone's favorite kind of tree is, right on par with our Forestry Management Advisory today. So for anyone just joining, if you could introduce yourself in the chat with your organization and your favorite kind of tree. I love a good old-fashioned oak tree. I think it's where I grew up in El Dorado County. We got a lot of those, but also I'm a sucker for Japanese maple trees because they're just classically beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much, Holly, for kicking us off. A Coulter pine. I haven't heard of one of those, but I'm definitely going to Google that after we get off of here. Oh, thank you. Oh, I love everyone coming in here. For anyone just now joining, if you could go ahead and put your organization and your favorite kind of tree in the chat. Thank you. I love seeing those come on in. A Christmas tree, Alicia, I love it. Dogwood tree, Michael, yes. One of my favorite pictures is of my childhood dog laying under our old dogwood tree, very on par. Weeping willow, yes. Crepe myrtle. Renee, I have some crepe myrtles in my front yard, but they're a little messy, but they're still beautiful, kind of like myself. A ginkgo tree, redwood, I love it. I love it. I think we can all kind of bond over trees a little bit. It's like interesting. I feel like, I don't know, it reminds a lot of folks of places where they grew up, or even if you didn't have any trees where you grew up. A banyan tree, ponderosa, amazing. I see Courtney, any tree with edible fruit. I love that. That's my dream one day. When I used to live in Sacramento, we had a lemon tree in the backyard, which was great for cocktails, but not great when you had to rake up all of them once a week. Not my favorite task. Awesome. John, I like your healthy trees. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. I want to continue and have folks keep introducing yourself in the chat and sharing your favorite trees. But I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So welcome everyone to our agriculture and natural resources, or excuse me, I should say agriculture, water and environmental technologies regional industry advisory meeting here today, focusing specifically on forestry management and related occupations. We really appreciate you and your attendance and participation here today, as these events help to inform our workforce pipeline, the community college curriculum, and kind of everything around our region. So jumping into things here, I want to quickly introduce myself to you all. My name is Caitlin Blockus, and I'm a project manager at Valley Vision. As I mentioned earlier, I grew up in rural El Dorado County, so this topic here today is very near and dear to my heart. And I will be facilitating our advisory here today with some of my Valley Vision colleagues. So before we kind of get started and jump into things, I want to say a genuine huge thank you to our supporters and our partners. These advisories are sponsored by the Los Rios Community College District with strong workforce funds in conjunction with the Centers of Excellence, Yuba, Sierra, and Lake Tahoe Community Colleges, and the Sacramento County Office of Education. They're also supported by the Capital Region's 4 workforce boards, which include SETA Sacramento Works, Golden Sierra Job Training Agency, YOLO Works, and the North Central Counties Consortium. So huge thanks to these folks. Without your support, we could not put these advisories on. So really just want to say a huge thank you. And before we get rolling, just want to go over a couple little bits of housekeeping here. You might be familiar with these. We encourage folks to keep your cameras on. We love seeing your gorgeous faces and love interacting with you all, so please keep those on. We recommend folks stay on mute until you're called on to ask a question. We will have some time for Q&A, but if we could please stay on mute. I love your cats and dogs and animals, but don't necessarily want to hear them barking at our advisory like I know my dog does. So thank you all so much. We also encourage you to submit any questions or commentary in the chat here. We find that these events have really robust chats, and it's great to see folks connecting and asking questions there. Our team is also monitoring the chat, so if you have questions on anything, we'll be able to pull some of those forward. So thank you so much for doing that. And just FYI, as Zoom probably told you when you jumped on, this meeting will be recorded and will be provided as some of our post-meeting materials. You'll receive this recording as well as the full PowerPoint. So all materials from this meeting we will be sending out to you all via email next week. So without further ado, I also want to welcome and have you all meet Becky Rowe, who is the Director of Forest Health over at Shasta College, to give a little bit of background. So Becky, I will go ahead and pass it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Caitlin. Can you hear me okay? I've
Yes.
been having some, okay, great. I've been having some challenges with the AirPods, so just want to make sure. Oh, wow, so awesome to see so many familiar faces and familiar names scrolling through on the chat. I love that opening activity. It really is my honor to welcome you all to this kind of inaugural Forestry Management Regional Industry Advisory meeting. And I want to thank all of you for carving out time to come together for this conversation so that we can learn from each other and really amplify, coordinate, and leverage our individual efforts that we're doing within kind of our communities and across the region. So from the community college perspective, we really are only as successful as our students, and our students measure success by their ability to develop meaningful careers and find ladders of opportunity within their chosen pathways, which truly engages and puts to use the skills and the training, the knowledge, the application that they have invested their time, energy, and oftentimes lots of dollars into learning. So for those of you gathered here today, you really play on the employer side especially, you really play a critical part in defining what real world, real-time skills, as well as innovative skills that will be needed in the future that our students really need to have in order to be successful across the forest sector. So whether that one-time student is now writing a THP or keeping communities safe through fire suppression or monitoring compliance in a fuels reduction project, running heavy equipment, restoring watershed post-fire, running logistics for a transportation company, performing field survey, forest inventory work, driving a log truck or a chip truck, climbing trees to provide effective and safe clearance around utility lines. Maybe they're preparing CEQA or NEPA documents. Maybe they're skidding a doodle pile into a landing for processing. Our students really only find success if we have equipped them as the training partners, the education partners, with the relevant skill sets that really meet your needs as employers. At the end of the day, the product that we are providing to the employer is a student who really understands what that career path means, has a passion for it, has a commitment for it, and can find opportunity and success for themselves, for their families in a long-term, what we hope to be a long-term career in really focusing in on and improving forest health up and down our state. So I'm really excited to see the engagement across the region. I had the pleasure of meeting Renee John at a Starbucks in a hotel where I was attending a conference just a couple of weeks ago. And I guess it really wasn't all that accidental because we really are all connected. I often tell people that the forest sector really is a pretty small community. But another community college colleague of mine happened to be having a meeting with Renee there and introduced us and started talking about this very meeting. And it was like, you know, perfect nexus of all of that was happening. On the education side, we are really very connected, and we absolutely understand and acknowledge and value that many of our advisory committee members individually within our own areas also share interest across the region. And so I'm really excited to have this engagement where we can talk about it in a kind of a larger conversation. We can build capacity across the sector, and we really can amplify the value, having that larger conversation and ensuring better informed, more collaborative, longer term strategies around building sustainable workforce and training and career and degree programs that have those successful outcomes, success for our students, success for you and success for our forests. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Becky, and thanks you for all of your assistance and being a wealth of knowledge to us. We really appreciate all of your help. And just jumping in and kicking things off here. You have met Becky and I for a little welcome and introduction. Just shortly here, we are going to hear some of our labor market projections and scope of occupations. Following that, we will hear from our industry panel discussion, as well as our current emerging and innovative programs section. And then we will close things out. And I am determined to get everyone out of here right by 5 o'clock today. So I may be keeping an eye on time and playing that role as well, but excited to jump on into things. So without any further ado, I will pass it over to Melissa Kovacs, who is a senior project analyst at CSU Chico in their Center of Economic Development. And I'll pass it over to you, Melissa.
Great, thanks so much for the introduction, Caitlin. Caitlin said, my name is Melissa Kovacs at the Center for Economic Development. And we are located at the university under the North State Planning and Development Collective. Us alongside our sister organization, the Geographical Information Center, provide mapping and data support to the North State. We're really excited. Yeah, you can go to the next slide if you'd like. Last year, just perfect timing for this, we completed a forest sector workforce needs survey and analysis. And yeah, we're looking forward to presenting that to you today. Go on to the next slide. A quick overview of the survey. It was created in partnership with the statewide Wildfire Forest Resiliency Task Force. We were able to receive 113 survey responses, which is a response rate of just under 9%. And we were able to collect them between June and October of last year. We surveyed throughout the region, employers throughout the region, and categorized it by California's Forest Management Task Force regions. Understandably, most of our respondents came from heavily forested areas. So 55% came from the Sierra and East Side, and followed by the North, Coastal, and Southern regions. And go to the next slide if you'd like. Thank you. A quick snapshot of who responded to our survey. Just over a third were private businesses, followed by nonprofits. And then we had a big chunk come from the federal, state, and local government level as well. For the entity categorization, most of our respondents were land and fuel management, followed by community outreach and education, implementation agencies, and licensed foresters. Under the other category, we had lots of our respondents in the other category were conservation corps, as well as restoration of forest product and other nonprofit entities. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you, Caitlin. All right, so some of our, just wanted to show some of our responses from our questions. We asked respondents to identify the method of recruitment for which they find new employees. The results of this one shows that across the board, the forest sector seems to have a pretty balanced approach to finding employees. Unfortunately, they still have, from our other survey results, a pretty big gap in their workforce. But for the methods of recruitment, there is a pretty balanced approach, which we thought that was good. For the number of openings, many of our respondents did have openings, and most of them had 1 to 5. Something that we thought was interesting and worthy to note is that the second most frequently chosen option was 51 plus openings. We thought that was pretty significant that a lot of our respondents had 51 or more openings in their company. As far as hiring timeline, they are looking to hire immediately or within the next 12 months, which speaks to the need and the urgency to gain more employees. So next slide. Thanks, Stephen. All right. We had respondents identify the reasons that positions were hard to fill. The largest one being a small pool of candidates in the area. So just under a quarter of the respondents said that that was a big reason for their positions that are hard to fill. followed by high cost of living and lack of available housing, which no doubt funnels into that first one, the small pool of candidates in the area. For the skills, we asked them to identify some skills and identify where their employees received their skills. A large majority of our respondents rely on the job training and prior work experience to have their employees gain the skills that are necessary. And notably, the 4-year degrees and certifications were chosen less frequently from our respondents. And looking at the gaps in skills and training, our respondents identified a lack of hands-on experience, soft skills, and technical skills as a big issue in the gaps in the training. Thanks, Caitlin. The next couple slides will focus on each region. And so the first region is the northern region. And we had respondents identify the top critical positions in their companies. For the northern regions, those would be forest and conservation scientists, laborers, and management. So forest and conservation scientists, that includes foresters, conservation scientists, biologists, so those scientific and forester level positions. Laborers are all the support labor that is included in the forest sector. So that would be, we included in that maintenance occupations and electricians and those types of support occupations. And then management is both the high level and low level management. So we took those findings from the survey and connected it with MC burning glass data to get a wider snapshot of what the occupations are within the region. We first looked at projected job change. So for the forest and conservation scientists within the northern region, there's a projected job change of a positive projected job change of 5.1%. The labor occupation has a projected negative job change. So that could be because a variety of reasons. It could be due to aging out and retirement. And it could be that there's not enough incoming workers to fill those gaps. And then finally, the management positions have a projected job change of 5.9%. And below is just a snapshot, a lot of information, but I think valuable to see, and especially the top schools. I thought that would be valuable for employers to be able to see where their incoming workers are coming from, and perhaps use it as a roadmap to better market their openings in their workforce. Move on to the next one. All right, and this is the Sierra and East side. Again, the top 3 critical positions are forest and conservation scientists, admin workers. So this includes bookkeepers, accounting, receptionists, those types of positions in the forest sector, and then management as well. All 3 have a positive projected job change, 15.6%, 4.7, and 6.9 respectively. An interesting thing to note on this is the management average median hourly wage. It's significantly lower than I expected, and then the other ones. It could be a couple of reasons. It could be that the Sierra and East Side has a management, both a larger management occupational force that is more skewed toward lower management. But unfortunately, because it is a third-party data source, there are limitations to what we can display. So just want to make a note of that in case you look at it kind of funny as I did. We can move on to the next one. All right, so the coastal region. This one, the top 3 critical positions that our respondents identified were transportation and equipment operators, firefighters and wildfire prevention, and management workers. All 3 are projected to increase as well. One note on the firefighter and wildfire prevention workers is MC burning glass doesn't have the government work occupations, unfortunately. That's why it's reflected to be such a small number of jobs and small number of competing employers as well. Just want to make a note of that as well. We can move on to the next. All right, finally, the southern region. The top 3 critical positions are management, laborers, and admin workers. All 3 are projected to have an increase in the number of jobs over the next 5 years at 17%, 5.6%, and 12.8%. And then below again is the snapshots of the different occupations. Something to note for the admin workers, there are quite a few program openings and programs available. That speaks to just the volume of availability in the southern region of the colleges and universities available, but also admin workers, though the numbers we have are based in for the forest sector, they can be trained just generally as admin workers. So bookkeepers can get general bookkeeping training. It doesn't have to be forest related to be able to be employed in the forest sector, which is why that program opening is so high. All right, and then you can move on to the next one. And finally, we took the projected job change and we're able to add it into InPlan, which is an economic modeling software, to be able to project what the economic impact will be for those job changes. So for the northern region, we have a projected economic impact of 2.7 million. I want to describe what the direct and indirect are. The direct would be just what it says, the direct impact of the forest sector specifically. And then the indirect is all the industries around the forest sector that rely on the forest sector for work. So this would be things like shipping and business service, business support services, those types of industries that rely on the forest sector for employees and work and to grow. One notable thing in the northern region is there's a negative number in for the indirect output. This could be for a variety of reasons. It could be due to net leakages. So it could be that the surrounding indirect industries are going outside of the region for work. It could also be due to inflation, because this is a 5-year projection. But other than that, all 4 of them have a positive total output. So the northern region, like I said, is 2.7 million. Sierra and East Side is 8.5 million. Coastal is 18 million, and Southern is 32 million. And that wraps it up. So Caitlin, are we doing questions right now, or should we wait for Ebony?
I think we can have Ebony present, and then we can do questions for both at the end, if that sounds good to you, Melissa.
Well, I have my information there. If you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And we're going to go ahead and move it right on over to Ebony Benzing, who is the research manager at the California Community College's North Far North Center of Excellence. So I will pass it over to you, Ebony.
Hey, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me come to present some labor market data. Can you advance to the next slide, please? As I've been introduced, my name is Ebony. I'm the research manager for the North Far North Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. Next slide, please. There are 9 centers across the state, and our collective mission is to support the development of career education programs in California's community colleges. Next slide, please. We do this by utilizing labor market data, both traditional and real-time, to answer questions like, what is the employment outlook for students? What skills and credentials are needed so students can obtain a job in our local labor markets? And also, what programs look ripe for investment? Where should the community colleges be investing funds in order to support our local employers in the local labor market? Next slide, please. So today I'll be presenting a brief overview of the occupational demand and educational program supply for forestry and natural resources occupations and programs across the North Far North region. The North Far North region includes a rural and urban mix of 22 counties and occupies a significant chunk of the state. We're going to start by looking at traditional labor market. Next slide, please. So the types of jobs that can be found in forestry and natural resources are wide ranging. It can include roles like what's listed here and spread to other jobs that may not immediately come to mind when we think about forestry and natural resources. And those are jobs such as policy analysts, administrative assistants, fish and game wardens, which actually has a little bit better, closer tie, and tour guides. For the purpose of my presentation today, we're just going to focus on occupations that would potentially be trained in a program pathway for forestry or natural resources. I did this for a very particular reason. It allows for better alignment between to look at educational program outcomes and the local labor market demand to see, hey, are we actually meeting what's needed in our regions? So there's 21 occupations that we're looking at, and they're broken into these 4 categories. We have technician roles, which are jobs that provide technical work in the sector and are supervised by management or professional staff. We have professional roles, which provide key decision-making in the design and implementation of projects and programs in forestry and natural resources. There are management roles, and these would be workers who manage or administer programs and supervise staff. And we also have specialty roles. They provide specialty services and support of the sector. This typically includes logging types of occupations, surveyors, and then also our tree trimmers and pruners for those colleges that have those utility vegetation management types of programs. Next slide, please. So can you back up one? There we go, awesome. So here we are getting to some hard data. So this is the projected demand for those 4 occupational subgroups in the North Greater Sacramento region. You'll see the light blue line kind of in the middle of the screen. That's the total for the North or Greater Sacramento region. In 2020, there were nearly 10,000, or actually, let me back up, 9,700 jobs for forestry and natural resources, occupations in the subregion. This is projected to increase to 10,360 jobs by 2025. And that correlates to the addition of 574 new jobs in the subregion by 2025. That's about an average job growth rate of 6%. There's an estimated just over 1,200 job openings each year for the next 5 years for workers in these occupations. So as you can see from the table, I've ordered this in terms of where the bulk of jobs fell in 2020 for each subgroup. At the very top of the list are those professional roles. Those include your scientists, so environmental scientists, soil and plant scientists, your foresters. They held about 40% of the jobs in our region in 2020. And they're projected to continue to hold that same share of jobs through 2025. So that's where the bulk of our forestry and natural resources employment is in the North or Greater Sacramento region. In terms of occupational subgroups and who's projected to grow the fastest, management and specialty roles. Those have average job growth rates of 9% and 8% respectively, and they're projected to outpace what's happening in the entire forestry and natural resources employment group in our region. So very fast job growth there. Now, I do have some additional data down at the bottom of the screen. It's in those little blue boxes, and this is just calling out specific occupations that are embedded within these subgroups. So occupations with the most jobs in 2020, that includes environmental scientists at nearly 3,000 jobs. Those workers will be found in our professional subgroup. We have biological technicians at 900 jobs in 2020. That's going to be in the technician subgroup. And lastly, tree trimmers and pruners at almost 800 jobs. Those workers will be found in the specialty subgroup. Occupations with the fastest projected growth over the next 5 years include logging equipment operators, which was a little bit surprising for me because that's not an occupation I tend to associate with the Sacramento region. I tend to associate them more with logging that's happening in the far north, but they're estimated to have about 16% job growth over the next 5 years, which is huge. Next up, we have soil and plant scientists and biological technicians at 12% each. Next slide, please. This here is the demand for same occupational groups, but in the far north, 15 counties, just above Sacramento area. In 2020, almost 6,500 jobs for the entire forestry and natural resources workforce. And that's projected to increase to slightly more than 6,700 jobs by 2025. That's the addition of 265 new jobs over the next 5 years, and that's an average growth rate of 4%. There's an estimated 927 job openings for workers in these occupations each year over the next 5 years. Far north, in terms of how these subgroups are broken down in the far north, a little bit different than what's happening in Sacramento. Technician roles lead the bulk of employment in the far north. And once again, that's going to be your forestry and conservation technicians, your forestry and conservation workers, and some other roles in there as well. The subgroup with the fastest projected job growth over the next 5 years, those are the management roles. That includes 2 occupations in particular, natural science managers, and then the first line supervisors of farming, fishing, and forestry workers. 10% job growth over the next 5 years. In terms of occupations with the most jobs in 2020, forest and conservation technicians, logging equipment operators, and forest conservation workers. So those are your technician roles and your specialty roles. And then occupations with the fastest job growth over the next 5 years include logging equipment operators, first line supervisors of farming, fishing, and forestry workers, conservation scientists, and foresters. Those will come from your specialty, management, and your professional roles. Next slide, please. For the last part of my presentation, we're going to take a look at educational program supply. Next slide, please. So condense a lot of data down into 2 little tables here. On the left-hand side, it's a quick snapshot of average annual awards for both the community college system and for your bachelor's degrees in the north and the far north. So across the board, over the last 3 years, institutions in our region conferred an average of 1,060 awards. That includes certificates, associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, each year for the last 3 years. You'll see a bulk of those awards are in the 4-year degree bucket. 912 of those awards are bachelor's degrees, which means that about 14% of the awards came from community colleges in the region. On the right-hand side of the screen, there's a little table that summarizes the colleges and universities that offer forestry and natural resources programming in the region. Most of the community colleges in the far north offer some type of program or training associated with these occupations. And big universities in the regions offer training associated with these. Includes Sac State, UC Davis, Humboldt State, and Chico State. There's also one public university on here, William Jessup, which is in the Sacramento region, that has recently started offering a new program related to this field. Next slide, please. So for the last part of our presentation, it's just a visual comparison of occupational demand versus supply. There's breakouts for each of the subregions, and it's color coded. So green represents those annual job openings. Blue are the community college awards, and then yellow are the 4-year institution awards. As you can see, it looks like demand is outpacing what we're currently supplying. I do want to note some caveats on this data, though, some things that are really important to pay attention to. First, supply data in general might be underestimated due to the exclusion of certain training pathways. I did not look at any general ed pathways that might lead students into these occupations. Those general ed pathways would be things that are in the sciences or in the social sciences. I excluded those from all of this data. Second, 4-year supply data, it might be slightly overestimated in terms of what we're seeing is being supplied to the region, because these colleges are training students that come from different areas. They come from outside of our regions, in addition to the students that are coming from our region. So that might be a slight overcount in terms of like, hey, how many workers are available to land these jobs that are open now, So next slide, please. That concludes our presentation. Brief overview, supply and demand. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you now if we have time. And if not, there's my contact information. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you so much, Ebony and Melissa. I know the data is one of my favorite parts. I'm a big data nerd, so I like seeing all the different postings and what jobs look like. I'm curious, I think we definitely have time for some questions. I didn't see any in the chat, but I'm wondering if anybody has any questions for either Ebony or Melissa. Yeah, looks like from James Mayer, a question for Ebony. Ebony, can you describe the methodologies used to estimate the job growth? For instance, does it reflect current growth or anticipated growth based on growing budget expenditures? The Forest Service just announced 20 million more each year for the Stanislaus National Forest alone.
Yes, thank you. And as I was reading that question, all the little technical wheels started spinning in my head about this. So the data really, okay, so I use the same data set that was used in the CED study. It comes from EMSI or MZ. And what they do is they collect data that comes from this, I'm going to say census or like surveys from employers throughout the regions, across the states and across the nation to provide estimates. So these are really estimates based off of historical job trends. It doesn't capture anything that may be happening right now, especially in terms of policy interventions and how that might impact the data. So, I mean, a best guess estimate with the release of the funds or the funds that may be available for different forestry things, it's most definitely going to impact workforce. It'll most definitely impact those projections. It's hard to say how it'll impact it because we have to honestly see what happens and then allow that to be incorporated into the historical data, and then the projections will be updated from that point on. If you want to get a little bit more into the technical aspects of this, I'd be happy to. We can have a call. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ebony. And I think that Norma Santiago, I see your hand raised if you want to verbally ask your question.
Yes, thank you, Ebony, for your presentation, as well as Melissa. Very good information. Has an analysis been done with regards to how well the curriculum behind a particular field of study within the forestry industry sector, how well that curriculum is actually training the individual for the job that they're applying for? In other words, is the curriculum matching what the actual needs are in terms of the skill set that are needed? Has there been analysis done to kind of make sure that that gap is bridged?
I think what I would like to do is I can speak a little bit to some of the data that's available from the community colleges, but I'm going to also ask that my colleagues who work in the colleges and with our students kind of jump in as well to provide some information about that. So from my end, some of the data that we collect, especially with regards to the career education programs, is centered around student employment outcomes. This data is hosted on CalPass or Launchboard, which is a publicly available site. And it looks at how well students are obtaining jobs related to their field of study. It also tracks things like wages. Did they have an increase in their wages and whatnot? And a lot of this is based off of survey data. So it's data that's self-reported by the students, and they'll let us know, hey, are you working in a job that's closely related to your field of study, somewhat related to your field of study, or not at all related to your field of study? So that's the data that I have on my end. Now I kind of want to open it up to my community college colleagues, if anyone can jump in.
Yeah, any faculty who want to jump in on that question?
You know, I'll dare dive in, try and represent community colleges. I'm Michael Bagley. I'm at Yuba College, and you'll hear from me a little bit more later today when I kind of share an emerging program that's developing. But I think that's a wonderful question about how colleges or any organization doing training is matching curriculum with workforce needs. And to be real honest, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be on this session and hear from industry. We work really hard to figure out what is needed and where the jobs are and where is the labor market. And you know, I can tell you, I've worked with Ebony already before, you know, like what is the pulse? And that is so important that we are meeting today. And I want to thank Valley Vision for setting this up so we can meet together. I know that any curriculum that will be developed in conjunction with what we find. So I'm not aware of too many studies, but I know the community colleges, and maybe my colleague from Lake Tahoe will jump in, but I do know we are studying this before we do the curriculum. So that is our goal. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, similar to Michael, my name's Carly with Lake Tahoe Community College. Similarly, we are also developing a forestry program right now, and you'll hear about that a little later. But we are essentially, the program has been designed by employers. So we're constantly listening to employers and gathering feedback on skills and education that students are going to need to enter the workforce. But I'm going to pass it over to Becky because she has a successful program already and she'll have lots to say on this, I'm sure.
Thank you, Carly. As I said at the top, we're a small network. So within the community college system, Carly and I have been working together kind of since Lake Tahoe was launching that. I've got to watch it grow and just see some fantastic things happening there. So yeah, I think it's really important. This is where these advisory committees really, really are key. So for us, we have a heavy equipment logging operations program that we have had a lot of success with. But that success has only been made possible because we've had employers at the table, and we're constantly taking a look at what those outcomes are, a critical look at what those outcomes are. Our students, you know, what things are students coming out of the program with that are great, and we want to keep that, and then where are the gaps and how do we address those gaps? And we just actually, 2 years into our program, we just this past summer went through a complete kind of revision of our certificate program. It's going through all the curriculum process now. And that was in direct response to our employer partners who said, we need more seat time. It needs to be more intensive, but we need to shorten the duration. And so we're taking our, what started as a 2-semester program with about 294 hours of operating time over the course of 2 semesters, into a single semester academy style cohort model that will have 405 hours of operating time within a single semester using utilizing some accelerated programs. So we're doing 2 8-week blocks to get all of the instruction in, but that instruction for the student is going to be so much more intensive, and we really anticipate some vastly improved outcomes. And again, employers at the table with us, sitting right down there with us, kind of reverse engineering, like what's the ultimate outcome look for you? How do we get there? What do we already have in place? What are we missing? And that's where those conversations with the employers just are absolutely key. So it's really a grassroots. I don't know that there's like necessarily specific data. I think that sometimes individually with our individual programs, we're having those advisory meetings, but then this sort of a situation is where we can come together and we can share some best practices, you know, lessons learned in other areas that maybe it's for different programs, but they still apply. And so let's just leverage our collective knowledge from the education side, what processes we have to work within, and then from industry side, where do you need us to try to be? And then finding those areas where we can work together to get there. And in the end, ultimately, it's all for the student and for our communities to get those skills in the right hands, in the right place, at the right time.
Thank you, Becky. And I'll pass, I think last we'll pass over to Ebony.
Yeah, oh, thank you so much. Let me lower my hand here. But yeah, community college is most definitely in connection with employers. And I just wanted to add a little bit from the COE perspective, some of the data work that we do. We look at job postings data. We help to identify important skills that are needed for specific occupations. And we include that in the reports that we publish for our colleges when they're developing new programs. We can also help our colleges develop, identify those employers who are out there in the marketplaces to figure out, hey, what are some potential employers we should be talking to, and how can we bring them into the table to have these conversations around what's needed at their local place of business and whatnot. So yes, all of this work is happening. I don't know if it's formally captured in like a study or anything like that, but it's just like a huge chunk of the work that we do, you know, so thank you. Thanks.
Thank you all. Very, very promising. Thank you.
Thank you, Norma. I think too, that's sort of where these, regional industry advisories also kind of come into having kind of that ongoing refinement. And so that's why we really appreciate you all joining us, asking questions like this, kind of making that conversation happen. And we do actually publish meeting proceedings reports that come out of these events. And thank you, Renee, for dropping a link in the chat. You can see some of our past reports. At about a month from now, we'll develop another one for this advisory to kind of help to advise that curriculum. So thank you so much for your questions. I encourage folks to keep them coming. But in the meantime, I'm going to jump on over to our industry panel discussion. We are really thankful to be joined by a fantastic panel of employers today. So I'm excited to introduce you all to the following, including Ann Anderson, who is the owner and a forester at Beal Mountain Forestry. John McCarthy, who is a forester as well as a program administrator over wood products and bioenergy at CAL FIRE. Tony Ortiz, who is a field safety specialist at Mountain Enterprises. Jeremy Dorsey, who is a district ranger at the Hume Lake Ranger District and Sequoia National Forest for the U.S. Forest Service. And Craig Ostergaard, who is the South Sierra Reforestation Manager at Sierra Pacific Industries. So I'm so excited to be joined by this robust panel here today. And I'm going to kick it off with some of our panel questions. Before I do that, I will let our audience know if you have any follow-up questions for the panelists that arise during this portion, please feel free to drop those in the chat. Our team will be monitoring that and we'll bring them forward. And if we have time at the end here, I want to make sure we get those questions answered for you all. So without further ado, I'm going to pose this question to our group and I will kind of pass the ball to each of you individually, but we'll start off going left to right and then have it fun and fresh and change up the order later on. I'm going to start with you, Ann, and ask folks if you could please provide a brief overview of your organization or business, your role, and the types of positions you generally hire for. And I will pass it to you, Ann. Also, my apologies if you hear my neighbor re-roofing their house next door. Ann, do we have you on with us? If not, I may, oh, there we go, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Beal Mountain Forestry Environmental Consulting is a female-owned forestry environmental consulting company, and we specialize in federal stewardship contracts and agreements. We also do service and logging contracts as well. We do a little bit of private landowners, working with cities, state agencies, and nonprofits. And then what else did you ask me? Okay, what's my role? So I'm the owner and the founder of Beale Mountain Forestry, and my primary role is the lead forester within the company. And we normally hire for seasonal field technicians and subcontractors.
Thank you so much, Anne. I'll pose that same question to you, John. If you could provide a brief overview of CAL FIRE, your role, and some of the positions you generally hire for. Do we have John with us today? Maybe there's a little lag on my end. If not, John, I may skip over to Tony and we can come back and loop back.
We have John. John's trying to talk, but we're not hearing him.
Thank
you. Do you want to stop sharing the slide for a second? Maybe if we see faces and we can.
Perfect. Thank you.
John, how are you doing? You want to try again? We're not hearing you. No.
The joys of our Zoom work from home era.
Not yet.
John, I can also loop back around if you want to take a minute. Sounds good. Okay, awesome. I will pass that question next to Tony Ortiz. If you could provide an overview of your organization, business, your role, and some of the positions you hire for.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Yes, Mountain F Enterprise is the primary contract for PG&E on utility. We do vegetation, right-of-ways, special projects. We've been, Mountain has been established in 1984. Since then, we've been growing up, and my role is I'm a field safety specialist, but also I do the hiring from Mountain Enterprise. I have that on my, been hired more than 700 employees for the company by interview, job fairs, with partnership with different organizations through the state of California. And I'm thrilled to be here, to hear what it is, but that's what we do.
Yeah, great to have you with us. Thank you so much. I'll pass that same question over to Jeremy Dorsey at the U.S. Forest Service. If you could provide an overview of your organization and your role and some of the positions you hire for.
All right, thank you so much, Caitlin, and good afternoon, folks. I'm going to apologize ahead of time if I have any technical issues on my end, as I am not, nor do I claim to be a subject matter expert in Zoom technology. But anyway, I'm Jeremy Dorsey. I'm the district ranger on the Hume Lake Ranger District of the Sequoia National Forest, as introduced. And wow, so thank you so much, first of all, for just being invited to this wonderful opportunity to engage with you. And so the Forest Service is just an agency that is really, dare I say, specialized in just public lands. And so when you look at the scope of what types of positions are available and that we regularly hire for, that's everything from recreation positions to engineering positions to forestry positions to law enforcement types of positions. And so all of those fields, are, coordinated and integrated in one way or the other to provide access to public lands for just to provide an avenue to natural resources, so to speak. So natural resource land management is the overall objective of our agency, and yeah, it is. There's 18 national forests in all of California, so so it is a I would think a very familiar agency throughout the state to folks. So So again, thank you for having me. I'm not sure if I captured every question you had for me there, or if there's something else out there I need to touch on. Okay.
Oh, that sounds great. Thank you, Jeremy. And I'm going to pass that same question over to Craig. If you could provide an overview of your organization, business, your role, and the positions you hire for.
Hello, I'm glad to be here. You hear me okay? Good. Great group you have here. I'm impressed. So my name's Craig Ostergaard, and I work for Sierra Pacific Industries. And it's Red Emerson's the owner, family-owned business, private family-owned business. We own largest landowner in the United States, 2.3 million acres of timberland, with mills also, California, Oregon, and Washington. And my role, I'm South Sierra Reforestation Manager. And that territory is basically the north of Placerville, the Rubicon River, all the way south, close to Yosemite. And the type of positions I'm interested, I'm the reforestation manager, so that would be my number one position I like to work towards. And we also have what we call a vegetation management specialist, which is a fuels reduction, fire risk reduction forester, and we hire foresters. We also have botany, wildlife, research technicians, and lots of jobs, lots of needs.
Well, thank you, Craig. Good to hear that. And I think I'm going to try John McCarthy one more time. Dang it. Okay, well, I'll loop around to the second question then. I don't know, maybe the headset is giving us a hard time today. Something.
No, can I just suggest, John, it's up to you, but sometimes it works to exit the meeting and then enter back into the meeting. So if you want to do that, we'll watch for you in the waiting room and then have you come right back in. So thanks. Perfect. And then if he comes in, maybe we can go back to that introduction question for him. So that's important. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you so much, Renee. Kind of moving forward here, I'm going to move on to our second question until we have John back with us, and ask folks, what are your key in-demand occupations and skills, and what positions do you have difficulty filling? And I think I will pass that Tony first, if you could answer.
Oh, can you repeat one more of the question?
Yeah,
it's coming true right now.
Yeah, no problem. We're also going to be dropping those questions in the chat for folks as well. Okay. But I'm wondering, what are your key in-demand occupations and skills, and what positions you have the most difficulty filling?
Okay, where the skills is forestry, so we're looking for trimmers, right? But the hard to find is people with the skills, with the knowledge. It is. We have our own training in our program to succeed, help the people becoming a climber, becoming a foreman. It is hard because most of the people want to apply as a groundman, as an starter position, and we need other crew leaders with experience so we can form the crews. This is a very demanding industry. We're looking at to add at least 400 more people in the next 4 months. So it's really hard to find people with skills and knowledge. And that is the reason we just raid South California, North, West. And that's the hard part, you know. And that's what the challenges we got right now.
Oh, thank you so much, Tony. Oh, sorry, do you want to continue?
No, that is fine. That was the two questions, right?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Thank you. I'll pass that same question over to you,
Can
Craig.
we hold on for 1 second? I want to see if John McCarthy's audio is back. He rejoined. John, can you hear us, or can we hear you?
No, dang it.
I can't hear you now, but when your video, or when you first started coming in, we thought we heard some background noise. Do you have another option?
I think that may have been Tony's
Oh, thank you. Okay, sorry. Do you want to try taking the headset off? Will that work or it won't work? Oh, maybe, thanks, Ebony. Do you want us to send you the call-in number?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Our team will call you in and we'll tap you in, John, to introduce yourself, and we'll pass the baton over to you then. I think while we do that, I'll pass that same question over to you, Craig. If you could let us know what your key in-demand occupation and skills are, and what positions you have the most difficulty filling.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's up. Refer right back to foresters, reforestation foresters, and then vegetation management specialist foresters. One of the requirements that you're needed in the state of California is that being a registered professional forester, and that requires a Bachelor of Science in Forestry and then working under a RPF for 4 years before you take a pretty hard test to get your license. So that's one thing. Reforestation Forester, this is what I always talk to the college about. Having your PCA license is really critical. If when I'm doing interviews, if someone is working towards that, even in college, or is working towards getting their PCA license, that means a lot. So Becky Roa, I'm really happy because I'm looking at your pest control advisor preparation forest health program class you already have set up at Shasta College. So I'm really impressed with that. Yeah, reforestation forester is the hardest position to fill. Long hours, when you're planting seedlings, you got to get up early in the morning. You're loading seedlings 3:30, 4 in the morning, meet the crews at daybreak. So that'd be the hardest.
Thank you so much, Craig. And I'll pass that same question over to you, Anne. If you could let us know your key in-demand occupations, skills you're looking for, and what positions you have the most difficulty filling.
Thank you. So I would say that all of the positions that we want to fill are difficult to fill. And the key occupations are forest technicians, so people who understand basic logging operations, how to identify streams and archaeosites and tree species, and having just those basic forest inventory skills. It doesn't have to be too in-depth because this is a basic entry level. I wouldn't expect somebody with a master's degree or a bachelor's degree to fill this position. This is somebody that could be an 18-year-old out of high school with just basic skill sets to do. But dominantly, I think the key thing is just having understanding and exposure to like safety around equipment and what a logging operation even looks like. And also, when you get up into the higher end technician skill sets, you know, having the ability to use computer and technology, being able to use things like Avenza and GIS, and just having the ability to do Word and Excel, and using GPS units is key. And we struggle with finding people who are willing or know how to do those things. And then emerging is obviously a lot of drones. So we're switching to a lot of drone recon and drone stuff. So having a skill set or understanding of how to operate new innovative technology is really key for technicians. We also struggle to find equipment operators, so people who know how to use chainsaws safely, how to run heavy equipment, understand regulations, so environmental, fire, safety, and also with the heavy equipment operators, we run into the issue that they might want to run a chainsaw, but they refuse to use computer and technology. So pushing to have a little bit more exposure to things like GPSing and Avenza for people who want to run heavy equipment or chainsaws. And then from the office perspective, administrative stuff. So, you know, again, like I specialize in federal contracting. And so that requires a lot more documentation, and it's more than just an invoice. We have to provide reporting and specialty things. So finding somebody who understands a little bit about the forestry industry that can go a little bit further than just doing payroll and invoicing, and can also work on the reporting as well. So I hope that helps. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. And I have to say, I love your wood background as someone who has stacked a lot of wood in their lifetime. Also, I've seen for both of our headshots and our backgrounds on this panel, I love all the wood, the forestry, all the alliteration there. And I see John McCarthy. Are you back with us? Are we dialed in?
Trying on the phone. Is that any better? Wow.
Perfect.
Okay.
Awesome.
All I can say is whatever computer problems I'm having, I'm sure it's user error. So apologize for that. I'll say real quickly. So I'm with CAL FIRE, and we're of course a large organization that does a lot of fire suppression. We do have forestry and foresters of all sorts of levels. I work in the climate and energy program. So we focus a lot on, we run a lot of grants, forest health grants. We do workforce grants. Some of the callers on have grants from us. We're doing new business development grants now too. I'd say that the challenge we have is similar to like what Craig said for forestry. We have forester positions in our department that are open and are great jobs. They do require you be a licensed forester. And there's just not a big not a big pool of people that can do that. And then if you are a licensed forester, then you also, to be a uniform position forester in CAL FIRE, you go through the fire academies. So that's quite it's a great experience, though it's quite a commitment of probably 6 months of your first 12 months at CAL FIRE. You're going to be doing that. So yeah, we do have environmental science positions too, and we're finding more luck filling those. Those are not uniform positions. You don't go to the academy. You don't have to be a licensed forester to have those. So we are kind of identifying the opportunities to bring new workers in through those environmental science jobs.
John, what is the hardest position that you have the most difficulty filling? If you could rank number one, what would you say?
So we have something called a Forester 2, and it seems like we have Forester 2 openings all across California. I think some of them have been open for 5 years and they haven't filled. So that's a licensed forester that has at least 3 or 4 years of experience. It's a supervisor level, and we just cannot fill those jobs. They're great jobs.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that insight there. And I'll ask that same question to you, Jeremy. What are some of your in-demand occupations and skills, and what positions do you all at the U.S. Forest Service have the most trouble filling?
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin, for that question. And so I'll try to be try to avoid being redundant here, because there are certainly some similarities, I think, in all those responses that were given to what the Forest Service is looking for right now. And so I'll specifically, kind of tailor my response to maybe some things that I hadn't heard yet. So one of the initiatives right now that's coming in from the Washington office is they're putting a lot of funding into fields work. And so when we look at the landscape of a national forest, especially in California, whether we're looking at the tree mortality or the beetle epidemic that we've been through, and certainly where we are with the wildfires, there's a huge need to look at the density of these stands, these forest stands, and look at the right prescription methods, whether that be silvicultural methods or fuels reduction through prescribed fire. And so those positions are not necessarily entry level. The folks that are at least running point on those positions in terms of writing the burn plans or writing the silvicultural prescriptions. But what those entry levels do eventually promote to, or where they start off are those entry level forest positions, some silvicultural positions like Ann mentioned. And so those positions and those skill sets that come with those, really, end up tailoring themselves to be desired for the what we call the fuels battalion positions. And so, again, there's a demand for it, and there's a lot of funding that's coming down for those positions. And I also like to circle back to something that Ebony mentioned during her presentation. By the way, thank you, Ebony and Melissa, for those great statistics that you presented. So when we look at California specifically, about 50% of the land in California is managed by some federal government entity, whether that's Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, National or U.S. Forest Service. And so the federal government is moving in a way where they are putting a lot of momentum behind shared stewardship. And so when we, I think Ebony mentioned that there's the type of indirect, career options for forestry that, like policy and grant writing and things like that. And so what I would say is that those skill sets are very highly desired when looking at just the scope of what the federal land management agencies in California are sort of moving to. The model where you would see, 25, 30 timber crew members, going out to the national forest and marking trees and painting trees, that sort of deal is probably a thing of the past at this point, and we are relying on partners and these various cooperators to achieve the land stewardship that we want to see. I think if anyone's been in California for any amount of time, you quickly learn that fire knows no boundary. It has no delineation versus private and federal land, and so there is a lot of momentum and interest for the federal government to continuously invest in partnerships, invest in our cooperators to steward the land appropriately. And so there's a huge need for those types of careers as well. For those grant management specialists, those policy analysts, and those specific skill sets, if I can just real quick mention, is a lot of work has been done in databases right now. So whether that is from the technical standpoint for database entry, or is it for the folks that are actually producing some type of permit or agreement. So those skill sets are certainly desired.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Although it was hard for me to get over you mentioning bark beetles at the beginning, because I'm used to bugs living in Northern California, but those things are evil. Thank you, though. I appreciate all of that knowledge and insight. I'm going to switch things up a little bit, and I'm going to kick this question over to Craig next. I like to change the order and keep you all on your toes a little bit because I'm fun like that. And so this next question, which will drop in the chat shortly, is how do you see policy, legislation, or environmental changes affecting the available positions within the field? And I'll start that with you, Craig.
Okay, actually, I'll just cover the environmental changes, and basically, as you can see, the gray hair in my beard and everything, we're all getting older. So there's huge transitions that's going to happen, a bunch of retirements in the next, well, they're already kind of started next 5 to 10 years. So there's kind of a, both in the forestry and logging side of it, there's a gap that's going to happen and already started. So hence the need for more professionals coming up into the industry. I'm not so sure about policy or legislation. the jobs are there. Actually, legislation policy probably is creating more jobs because it's more complicated to do forestry and logging nowadays due to all the paperwork needed.
Thank you, Craig. And Jeremy, will pose that same question to you. How do you see policy, legislation, or environmental changes affecting the available occupations? And I know you touched on this shortly in your last question, but curious to hear some more.
Yeah, I probably sit in a different space than some of the other panelists here, just because part of our mission is to use these regulations from various policies and legislation to help protect and restore and the natural resources on the landscape. And so what I would say to that is I see the change coming in where the American public finds relevance with public lands. So just for an example, that pendulum kind of swings in how we gear up our efforts is based on the demand of the public. So if you look at the early beginnings of the U.S. Forest Service, where there was a need, due to World War I and World War II for wood, well, that changed. A lot of things and markets were driven by what we were able to produce. Then, when folks were, really getting into, range management and things like that, well, then there was another, shift in the way. And so one of the things that's recently, I think, affected us all was the pandemic. And so now we're seeing a different type of push where we all experience the need for, the great outdoors, this open, fresh air, recreational opportunities when Disneyland shuts down, a place where folks could, go and ride their OHVs, a place where folks can, visit a ski area or visit a campground and have, just some outdoor recreational opportunities. Also, I see, like I mentioned, a huge need for looking at the fuels reduction work. And so when we look at some of the environmental changes, and so we've already seen some policies and legislations and funding allocated specifically for that, so folks can feel the need to access these public lands in a safe manner. That's just kind of a overview, broad response there. But I think we're certainly on the brink of change, and what a time to be in the a business of managing public lands.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I will throw that same question over to you, John. How do you see policy, legislation, or environmental changes affecting available occupations? Oh, hang on. I think you're muted on your phone. It might be the problem, which you were probably doing to be polite. Can give it one moment here. No sound. Oh my goodness.
How about now?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, you got me.
The anticipation is building.
Yeah, so I'm so sorry for holding everybody up today. So I address two of the things, maybe legislation and environmental changes. I think, well, and I'll say first that changes in those are making the availability of occupations in forestry just grow like I've never seen. I got out of forestry school in '89 and there were no jobs. There was just nothing. I went to work in construction and then went into the Peace Corps. there were no jobs, and now it's just incredible. It's really an exciting time. I think the two things driving it are, as far as environmental changes, I mean, climate change has really changed what's happening in our forests. We've got incredible challenges facing reforestation following these fire events, and then also, like Jeremy was saying, fuels treatments, forest health projects, trying to get our forests to a place where they're resilient to wildfire. And, you know, can we do that at a pace and scale fast enough to stay ahead of the wildfires through this, you know, it's got this long extended drought. And then legislation, you know, the money is there. There's just money pouring in to do projects in the woods. There's no shortage. It's not money that's holding back what we're doing. It's really kind of the whole infrastructure, the workforce, the equipment, the trucking, the whole supply chain. So we're working at kind of building it all up, and workforce is definitely part of it. And trying to understand, and we're not the only industry that's short on labor. So where is the labor going to come from? You know, are we going to get students to transfer into forestry from another major, or are we going to get new students to enroll but normally wouldn't have enrolled in school? Or are there declining careers that, you know, are there occupations that are kind of in decline that we can pull from? But the good news is for those interested in working in forestry, there's so much opportunity, and it's a huge challenge. It can be overwhelming because you know the wildfires are kind of hitting us harder than we can get things ready for them. But it's you know, if you're interested in trying to make a change and trying to do something, which I am, and I know a lot of people on this call are, it's a great place to be.
Well, thank you so much. And Peace Corps and CAL FIRE, I think I need to have a cup of coffee with you at some point. I'm sure you have some great oh my goodness.
Well, I used to work I did reforestation at Sierra Pacific 20 some years ago too. So I don't think I've seen you in a long time, Craig, but hi. So.
Good to see you again. Can I add another comment here? I just actually want to follow up with what Jeremy and John said too. It's the fires are driving everything on what the needs are in the woods. There's a lot of cooperation going on between the agencies, CAL FIRE and Forest Service, on trying to prevent these catastrophic wildfires from happening. So that is a huge job opportunity that is out there for everybody. And just like John said, it is hard to find qualified people or folks that are available to meet that need and deal with the problems that we're having with wildfire and like reforestation, et cetera.
Thank you, Craig. And I always love when we can bring folks together and it looks like get the SPI gang back together. So great to have you both with us. I'm going to pose that same question next to Anne, how you see policy, legislation, or some environmental changes affecting available occupations.
So I try not to repeat some of the stuff that's said, but in my unique position as a primary federal contractor is that I see this, well, more so in the time that I've had my career, that there's been hiring freezes more than there's been hiring opportunities within the federal agency. And so what happens is that as people retire, there's a huge shortage of people who actually can manage and oversee projects. So even though tons of money is coming in for restoration work and forest thinning, there isn't enough staffing to help fill in the oversight. So that workload has to go somewhere. And Jeremy kind of touched on this a little bit, where that's shifting more to that going to private industry, which is great for me and great for consultant companies like me. But what ends up happening is that we have this gap between the top is empty and the bottom's empty. And then we have these rare few people who still have the skill sets and the understanding of how to get this work done. And so we have like a gap at the top and a gap at the bottom with the workforce, and that's all driven by legislation and the political environment. And as those things change, you know, priorities change. So Jeremy talked a lot about recreation. People want to recreate more in the forest, but that means that we have to have a forest for them to recreate in. And so, you know, a lot of policy moves away from traditional logging or forest thinning. And now we have restoration work. And so it's like this battle between recreation and logging, who's going to get the funding, and then who's going to get the workers, because we're all competing for the same employee pool. So I would say, yes, it very much so impacts the industry. And I've seen it throughout my entire career. And it's just getting worse.
Thank you, Anne. And do we have Tony with us? I was planning on passing to him next, although I think he might having some internet problems. I was like, it's a miracle with folks working in rural forested areas that we are all making it through this call. I'm up in kind of rural Auburn. So I'll pass that to Tony when he gets back on the call. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and jump to our next question. And that is, if you were starting your forestry career, or forestry related career, I should say, over again in 2022, how would you break into the field, or how do you recommend applicants break into the field? And I'm going to go ahead and, John, I know you mentioned this in the 1980s, but I'll pass this question to you first on, you know, how do you recommend breaking into the field today for applicants, or how would you have done it if you're doing it again today?
Yeah, thanks. I should ask, can everybody hear me?
Perfect.
Great. Wow. All right. So a couple of things I would do. Internships, summer internships. I think they're really key. And there's a lot of them available. And don't be like I would have been, which is, you know, maybe like the day I finish finals, say, okay, where should I work this summer? You know, you got to start in November, December. There's terrific internships out there, and they're paid. They're not volunteer. SPI has a great internship program. Cal Fire at the demonstration forests. A lot of the nonprofits have summer programs. Forest Service has summer programs. So get a year or two of that in, and man, you are highly desired as an employee when you get out of school. Tied to that, I would say get a mentor. There's these mentorships available now, and if I had a mentor, I would have known so much more about what was out there and how to do it, and how to write it, somebody to look at my resume and tell me where to apply, and you know, tell me what kind of boots I needed for the woods and things like that. And then I would say get into operational forestry. Like, forestry at its core is being able to go out in the woods and not get lost, work with a map, follow a transect, measure trees. Like, that's what we do. We count trees. How many of them? What species? What density are they? So even though, and I think it's becoming maybe like with remote sensing and GIS, and there's incredible imagery available, there's still no substitute for knowing the ground. And I think everybody needs to start off by getting good woods jobs and getting out there. And that's really why people go into forestry. Most go into forestry anyway. You'll have plenty of time to sit at a desk later. But I think if you've got some operations experience, you've done internships, you've had a mentor, you are just incredibly ready to transfer from academics into occupation.
Thank you, John. I must admit too, this is one of my favorite questions to ask. And suddenly, like, based on your advice, I'm like, should I go into forestry? Should I change my career path? It just sounds so interesting. I'm going to switch it up, and I'll pose that same question to you, Anne. If you're starting your career over again in 2022, how would you break into the field? You know, how do you recommend folks do so?
So I'm pretty lucky because I'm young. So I would say I wouldn't have changed anything the way that I did it. I lucked out, and the way that that worked for me was it's truly networking. It's who you know, especially in the forestry industry. That's how you're going to get a job, and the way you can do that. And I talked with our operational director today about this. Is that a lot of times people go straight into internships because they think that that's something they want to do. And I was arguing the point that job shadowing, so just going out for a day with someone in a profession and job shadow them, it's not asking a lot of somebody to give up a day to see what they do before committing to an internship program, because you might get into an internship and realize that you absolutely hate forestry and that you wanted to go into recreation, or that you're more of a fire person. And so I would encourage job shadowing because that gives you the networking, and those people that you might go out with might have an idea of where you'd fit in. When I started, there was barely any forestry jobs open. And so I did a lot of volunteer forestry work. So I went out with foresters and I just worked for free. So unfortunately, that's how my career started, but it worked. And those people that I networked with and volunteered with got me into my first career position. And so I would just say that networking, the job shadowing, volunteering, sometimes is the way to get into the workforce and get that experience.
Thank you, Anne, and great to hear that, your experience and that perspective. Jeremy, I'm going to pitch that same question to you. It's 2022, you're starting your career all over again. How are you doing it?
I can really appreciate the way that Anne responded to that question. Because I don't know that I would change much either, but some of the I'd say just differences from when I came into the agency. I did I did probably wait longer than I should have, and I was knocking down doors just trying to see, hey, is there a job available after graduation, type of deal. Where now we're pretty much in a just an employee demand, right? And so right now someone could just show up and say, hey, I would like a job, and people ears will perk up. So but the advice in terms of the type of mindset that I think would benefit anyone into starting off their career, especially in forestry, is be prepared for change. When getting into a specific program or area of study, you may learn it one way. You may use a certain type of technology one way. When I was in the forestry management program, we were using Biltmore sticks. I doubt that that's even an item you would find in a Forest Service office at this point in time. So, technology is always going to change. It's going to evolve, and so don't shy away from those opportunities to learn something different, because there's going to be plenty of opportunities as this particular industry evolves, as the need evolves for the demand, whether it's for wood or wood products, or access to land, or to prevent wildfires, or to provide access to recreation. So don't be afraid to change with the times, but also be prepared to be solution oriented. And so seeking that mentor, like it was previously mentioned, is certainly going to help get perspectives and when we look to find solutions. Because when you look at where we find ourselves with trying to achieve optimal ecological restoration, or prevent these massive catastrophic fires. It's not a one answer fit all type of effort. It takes biologists working with hydrologists. It takes hydrologists working with soil scientists. It takes that silviculturists working with our field shop. So yeah, being coming in with the right mindset of just looking at doing this work is I think going to be key into how you want to start your career.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I will pass that same kind of final question to you, Craig. If you're starting your career over, maybe it's with John, who knows? No, I'm just kidding. If you're starting your career over in 2022, how are you doing so, or how do you recommend applicants do so?
Okay, these are all great comments. I'll just try and add to them. It is as much experience as you can get, covering all the aspects of forestry, wildlife, soils, just like Jeremy was talking about. That's what is going to help you get a new job and then work ethic, and that's going to kind of tear to what Ann said there. So if I was interviewing Ann and she told me she was going around with foresters, volunteering her time, not getting paid, that's just like that's exactly what you're looking for. So someone that's willing to go the extra mile to gain the experience and learn about the position they're applying for. We worked with Chico quite a bit, did a couple hires, and we were looking into their ag science program and did some hires from that, just because that's ranchers and farmers, and so work ethic, etc. So you can train folks too if they have the right mindset and want to learn. That's what you're really looking. That's what's going to get you into the industry now. I get really excited if someone has 1 or 2 years experience on when they're interviewing for them. So.
Well, thank you. I always love that question, just, looking on how we can kind of guide folks' pathways. So I appreciate that. And I think I didn't see any questions in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward to the next section of our agenda today, unless anyone has a quick question for our panelists. You don't want to ask about John's time in the Peace Corps or Cal Fire, U.S. Forester? We got everyone here today. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our next section here on current, emerging, getting all ahead of myself, current, emerging, and innovative programs. I'm really excited to be joined here today by Carly Murphy, who is a forestry education grant manager at Lake Tahoe Community College, who will be sharing a little bit about how they are launching their forestry management program, as well as Michael Bagley, PhD, who is the Dean of STEM and Social Sciences at Yuba College, talking about Yuba College's emerging watershed program, as well as Stephen Kasperite, who is an assistant principal at the Placer School for Adults, talking a little bit about their relationship and partnership with Mountain Enterprises. Stephen is actually who connected us with Tony, who we saw earlier on our employer panel. So looking forward to talking about some of these programs, and I think I'll go by the order I have on my screen here. So Carly, I will kick it to you first, and I know you have a slide or two, so let me know when to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to the first one right now. Hi, everyone. My name is Carly Murphy. I'm the Forestry Education Grant Manager at Lake Tahoe Community College, where we are working on a new forestry program that is launching this fall. So we hear the demand, the problems that you all are talking about with needing more people, skilled, educated folks for all these open positions. And so we are really excited to launch this program. It will be it'll have a focus on forest restoration and public land management. That's what we have here in Lake Tahoe. So that'll kind of be our main focus, but these students will be well trained and available to go to many different positions throughout this state and hopefully beyond. The program will be comprised of an employable skill certificate, a certificate of achievement, and an associate of science degree with transfer opportunities to some 4-year programs. So we designed it to have many steps for students So they can pop in, and if they end up leaving, then they'll still end with something that hopefully will make them employable with all of you. And then the other component of our program is job placement. So we're really working with employers to make sure that students can be placed in positions, internships, and then also after they graduate, we want students to be successful. So I'll put my contact information in the chat after I'm done, but I'd love to hear from you if you're an employer looking for students with this type of background. Feel free to reach out and we can talk about some opportunities that we might have available. And then the next slide, please. And then I also just wanted to take a moment to let you all know about an event Lake Tahoe Community College is hosting on May 12th and 13th, only a couple weeks out. This is in person in South Lake Tahoe. It is the Forestry Education and Workforce Development Summit. So a lot of what you just heard today, we are going to be diving a lot deeper. It's a full day of essentially what we're hearing here, really with the primary goal of just convening all of us in the same room to start tackling some of these issues that we've been discussing. Currently, we are right at capacity, but we have a wait list and numbers are changing every day. So again, I'll put my contact information in the chat and feel free to reach out to me if you would like to join the summit. And so thank you for having me and letting me talk a little bit about our program. We're really excited about it and excited to partner with many of you on the call as we launch our program this fall. Thank you so much, Caitlin.
Thank you, Carly. I'm going to unshare my screen and pass it to Michael next, but thank you for providing that information, Carly. Carly and Michael have been in our planning team, and we like to joke around that we have our kind of dual sister events going on. So really excited to see the output of that summit. And Michael, I'll pass it over to you next.
Hey, thank you, Caitlin. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Bagley. I'm the Dean of STEM and Social Sciences at Yuba College. Just been a great experience participating with Valley Vision and helping, be part of the planning of this event. Yuba College has been recently been given an amazing opportunity to partner with one of its local agencies, the Yuba Water Agency, to work on building a watershed program. But I thought I'd just give a little bit of background and share about Yuba College and Yuba Water Agency. So Yuba College was founded in 1927, and so we're on 95th year birthday, and I'm proud of that. I think one thing that's special, hearing all the different people in industry and hearing clearly that there is going to be a workforce demand in forestry and natural resources, that we need to work together to provide the people for the workforce. Our college operates a span of 8 counties in nearly 4,200 square miles in rural north central California. So it gives you an idea of the number of places students and people could come in to be part of this program that we want to serve, all the different agencies that are presented today. Now, the Yuba Water Agency, public agency in Yuba County, they're there for flood risk reduction, hydropower fisheries, different things. But, anytime, a community college, and I want to brag about the community college because a big part of them is to build a workforce. That is a core mission for a community college in California, is workforce development, and hence, this meeting today. We have partnered with Yuba Water Agency, and for just what science curriculum for the region, and just being involved, what's happening in the local schools. And we know that the local schools and the high schools will be the pipeline for the workforce. They come to Yuba College for training that go into the 2-year different agencies like CAL FIRE, U.S. Forest Service. Right now, the reason we chose watershed, we look at the Yuba River as an incredible historic and special river, rises at the crest of the Sierra Nevada mountains, 8,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean. And it flows nearly 100 miles to another river that I find, just wonderful, the Feather River. Goes through 100 miles of canyons. So we figured together that, a healthy forest leads to a healthy watershed. So we are going to be a little bit different than what Tahoe and, say, Shasta College is doing. And that's good. We're partners. We're going to work together to really meet the workforce demands. And I can tell you one thing I heard from people talking about emerging. So Caitlin, great questions from Valley Vision, what would you look at now or emerging? And I heard someone say drones. And so I'm really excited. We actually have just started like ordering drones and some software, and I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, this would be great for our watershed forestry type natural resources program. I heard, some steps. We are really interested in providing, helping connect students with summer internships. So like Carly said, if you're interested in reaching out to me and starting creating the relationships, we're excited to be a partner to work with you and everyone here on this call. So thank you for this time. Really happy to be here.
Michael, I know you're a Yuba local, but the way you describe the river and the landscape, I'm like, do I need to move to Yuba? It just sounds so, I mean, I've been up there a few times. I know it's beautiful, but now you're really convincing me. I'm going to pass it next to Stephen Casperay to speak on, the Placer School for Adults and their partnership with Mountain Enterprises. I'll chuck it over to you, Stephen, who also has a lovely picturesque background.
Yeah, National Forests. There we go. Hi, everybody. Steve Casperay. This is a wake-up question for everybody. How long has adult education as an institution been a part of the United States educational system? We're the best kept secret in America. And you can answer it in the chat. And I'll be happy to hear who thinks they know what the answer to that question is. I hate to beat Michael, but adult education has been around much longer than any of the community colleges in America, any of the universities. So we go way back. Our task is to serve the underserved. We serve the immigrants, the inmate population, and what I call wounded learners. And the reason I bring that up is because, in case you haven't looked around, there isn't much of a workforce available out there. Our workforce is coming from these populations. And until we bridge the gap to getting them the education they need to get to the community colleges, to get to the workforce, we are going to go with an untapped, unused resource. So I'm just going to throw that out there, big words. Has anybody, Caitlin in the chat, given a date on when adult education started in America? I'm not checking, but Mountain Enterprises, Tony, who himself is the child of immigrants, 150 years, no, not even close, Tim, sorry, had approached multiple community colleges and adult schools, and no rub on anybody, and said, look, we got a problem. We have a workforce that's growing exponentially. The numbers that Ebony had put into for the growth in Tony's area has already been eclipsed by Tony's company, let alone the region. So Tony approached us and said, we have a problem. 60% of our workforce, and this is a company that started off with 2 brothers and less than 200 employees and now is eclipsing 3,000 and expects to hit 5,000 employees. 60% of our employees are non-English speaking. Can you help us? And so we said, let's see what we can do. So we created a pilot program that they came to our program in the evening that was contextualized ELL for Mountain Enterprises. So it was a real collaboration with industry partner. And that didn't work because they started working 14 hours a day because of the Caldor fire, every fire you can imagine. So we said, okay, let's reboot. We said, let's bring them in for 2 weeks, do an orientation with them, send them home with a Chromebook, and they can meet 3 times a week with their instructor for 20 minutes. And they'll work with an online program with contextualized learning to help them both with workforce, with communicating with the public, because that's whose backyards they're going into to trim trees, so on and so forth. And so far we've had, and then what Tony did was he got his employers to work with the union to state that this was a part of their employment. So you have to put some kind of, something in there to get them to show up, because otherwise, why would they? These guys are working 12, ladies are working 12, 14 hours a day. So we had to keep it short, sweet, and also make it accessible, let them do it in the comfort of their homes after they've gone home, taken a shower, had something to eat. We've got 100 employed in the class, and we expect to have over 400 by the fall. So our numbers went up exponentially. The reason I bring all that up, and I will tell you what will happen with it in time when we have some more data on it. But if you want to get more of these employees into the workforce, you've got to start with those populations. I also run 3 inmate education programs. We'd love to talk to all of you about inmate education. We'd like to bring foresters into the jail. Don't get them in probation because you'll never see them. Bring them into the jail and educate them in the jail when they're truly a captive audience, that their brains are clean, their thinking is clean, because they'll be the first to tell you that the minute they leave the jail, they don't know what's going to happen to them. They recidivate faster because it's easier to recidivate than it is to jump through all the hoops it takes to get a real job. So there are a lot of opportunities and a lot of employees out there that we can be putting to work, that want to work, but we've got to remove the barriers. So there's my spiel. Anybody get the founding father of adult education in America was Benjamin Franklin. He started the Junta Society, started at the very foundation before our country was even a country. So adult education wins when it comes to oldest institution in America.
Stephen,
and nobody knows about us, by the way. All the community colleges were called out, the universities, and thank you, they are wonderful institutions I went through myself, but I didn't see a word about adult education anywhere in any of those slides. So I just want to get that out there.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Stephen. And with the Junta Society, you pulled a vocab word from high school US history way from the back of my brain. And so thank you so much for sharing on your partnership. It was great to hear from you and from Tony as well. I know that when Renee and I heard that upon meeting with you, we were really inspired. So thank you for sharing. And I'm curious too, before we move forward, if anyone has questions for Stephen, Carly, or Michael on their various programs. Stephen, it looks like we have a question for you in the chat on who teaches the courses and are they ESL teachers or other?
Yes, so we're in a double bind community college. If you have a master's degree, you can teach at the adult education. We're attached to either community colleges or school districts. You have to have a credential. So all of our teachers are credentialed teachers, ELL credentialed teachers. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Okay, if so, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm going to keep rolling here because I am determined to get you all out of here right crisply at 5 o'clock. And I just wanted to briefly share with you all, I think that Ebony and Melissa did a fantastic job sharing labor market information and kind of went, above and beyond, but we also compiled a list of some of the different programs being offered at all the schools in the North Far North, or community colleges in the North Far North, I should say. And so again, we will be sending this presentation out, but I wanted to give you a chance just to look over some of the different programs being offered. This here you can see the programs being offered at Butte College as well as Feather River College, some of the Associates of Science, as well as the different certificates and different types of technical training. So here we see Butte College and Feather River College. We've also included some of the programs available at the College of the Redwoods and Shasta College. Again, you see more Associates of Science, different certificates, different technician programs. And then finally here, we have some additional programs listed for the College of the Siskiyous, Lassen Community College, as well as Mendocino College. So just wanted to list these here for you. We will be sending this out if you want to, take a further look or kind of have this on your mind for some of you working with students or on various programs across the area, but wanted to provide an in-depth. I think Ebony actually, went above and beyond and included some of this in her PowerPoint previously, but wanted to expand on that a little bit here. And this will absolutely be shared out with you all. I also just wanted to, before we wrap, let you all know about a platform called Handshake, which if you don't know about it, the Los Rios Community College District has partnered with Handshake, which is one of the top career development platforms in the United States. Students can use Handshake to discover internships, conduct different job searches, and register for events with employers. We have found this is a great way in kind of bridging that gap and that connection that we talked about a little bit earlier. And the Los Rios Career Services and Work Experience programs really welcome new partnerships with employers whether you're looking to, connect with talented students and alumni, or whether you may already have a Handshake account or are interested in creating one. I think one of my colleagues is going to go ahead and drop a link to get started and do so in the chat here. But thinking about some of those panel questions we talked about earlier, certain areas that are hurting for workers or trying to bring folks in, I think this is a great platform to do so and to connect with students. So just wanted to flag that all for you before we close out. And I am really excited to get you out here right on time, or 5 minutes before, I should say. I just want to say a huge thank you for everyone who has joined us today, as well as our guest speakers for their insight. Everyone here, 5 minutes to 5 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, for providing your questions, your contributions. A thank you to our supporters for making these advisories possible. I also really want to thank our planning team for working so in depth with us to make this happen, including you, Carly, Michael, Ebony, Melissa, Sarah, Stephen. I think James Mayer from California Forward is also in the room here, has been a great help. So huge thank you to all of you for your insight and kind of delving into this really important subject matter. I've had folks in my life personally lose their homes to wildfires and the Caldor fire and Tamarack fire. And just was really excited to do this advisory because it is so pertinent and informative to our region, kind of connecting the issues that we are having environmentally with the skills set that we need to see up here. So really excited that we had the opportunity to work with you all and kind of push this out there. And just to follow up, our team will be sending out this presentation as well as a recording of this event probably on Monday or Tuesday of next week. This recording will also live on our Valley Vision YouTube channel. So if you ever want to go back and watch at any point, it will live there. And in about a month or so, we'll also be sending out a meeting proceedings report summarizing some of the key findings of this event. So I want to thank you all again for joining us and send you out into your Thursday afternoon. So have a great afternoon and thank you all so much. I will hope to see you all soon at our next advisory, perhaps. Bye, folks.